Caught on video, an African-American mother of a 7-year-old boy in Fort Worth, Texas, called police after a white man allegedly put his hands on her son because he said the boy littered. From there, it escalates to a point where this happens. Take a look. Okay, so here to discuss this is Lee Merritt, the attorney for Jacqueline Craig, the woman in that video. Good evening. Thank you so much for coming on. So your client, Jacqueline.
Good evening, Don. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Your client, Jacqueline Craig, called the police for help. She wanted to file a report of assault on her 7-year-old son. So tell us what happened next, and how did you get to that point?
Well, the police arrived to the scene after receiving a complaint from a mom that her son had been choked by a neighbor for littering. This is her 7-year-old son, and so the first person that the officer spoke with on the scene was the person accused of the assault, and the person accused of the assault admitted to doing it. He confirmed with the officer that he had grabbed the kid because he had littered in his yard, and so the officer turned to Miss Craig and said, "Well, why don't you teach your child not to litter?" And as you can imagine, that incensed her.
Mm-hmm. And then?
Okay, and so she told the officer, why are you so focused on whether or not my child litters and not the fact that this man is not allowed to choke my son in any circumstances? And in the video, you hear the officer say, "Why not?" And of course, as any protective mother, her anger began to build, and even despite the sort of these circumstances, she was able to maintain her relative cool. She said, "You know, what you're saying is really upsetting me." And the officer turned to her. He says, "Well, if you continue to raise your voice, you're going to upset me." And at that point, her 15-year-old daughter intervened and stepped in between her and the officer, facing her mother, and began to try to calm her mother down. But the officer then escalated the situation by throwing the young lady out of the way and executing a brutal arrest that we've all seen on tape now.
Okay, is there a prior issue, Lee, with this neighbor, or is this something new?
This is something new. They have seen each other around, but they've never exchanged words, either niceties or any previous beef.
Okay. So Jacqueline's daughter, Bria, she calls her Bree, was recording this encounter, and I want to play some of this video, and I have to warn you, it's disturbing. Here it is.
Why don't you teach your son not to litter?
He can't prove to me that my son littered, but it doesn't matter if he did or didn't. It doesn't give him the right to put his hands on it.
Why not?
Because he don't.
You are loud.
Who's that?
Because he don't.
This man just asked my mama, why does this white man not have the
How would you ask me, why don't I teach him? You don't know what I teach him. And you don't, whatever you teach your kids don't mean that they go by your rules when they're not in your sight. Because you just pissed me off telling me what I teach my kids and what I don't.
If you keep yelling at me, you're going to piss me off. I'm going to take you to jail.
Oh, well, you're not, okay?
They don't shoot that. We are on live. Don't grab her. Don't grab her. You're not grab her. You're not grab her. You're on live. You're on live.
Okay, so Lee, I have to ask you, as her counsel, the first question from the officer is, why don't you teach your son not to litter? What do you make of the response from that officer?
I mean, it shows the inherent bias. The officer came to that scene, and he saw a white man and a black woman, and he made up his mind before really asking any real questions that the white man was not going to be guilty of anything, and that he was going to find a reason to be upset with the complaining witness, the black mother.
Mm-hmm. Jacqueline was arrested for failure to have an ID and resisting arrest. Bria was arrested and charged with resisting arrest and interfering with a public work. How are they doing tonight, and have they been released?
They have been released. They were held over, that happened about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. They were taken and processed down at the local penitentiary, a local jailhouse, and then transferred early this morning, about 3 a.m. this morning, to another location, and that happened only after an internal affairs investigation began into the officer's conduct.
And they're doing okay right now, because I asked you in the break and you said they're doing better now. But both of them are tired, obviously, and distraught about this.
Sure.
I got to ask you quickly: was a report ever taken on the assault of the boy by the police?
There was no report taken for the original call. That report has not been made to date, to our knowledge.